Welcome, everybody. We're, of course, pleased to be joined by the delegation from NATO. Of course, we're going to talk about NATO, in particular the President's desire to see NATO spend a little bit more resources on defense. And I know that's something Secretary-General Rutte agrees with me on. We're going to talk, of course, about the Ukraine-Russia conflict and how to bring it to a negotiated settlement. But we want to make sure that NATO is actually built for the future. And we think a big part of that is ensuring that NATO does a little bit more burden sharing in Europe so that the United States can focus on some of our challenges in East Asia.
Europe stepping up, the European part of NATO stepping up, you're absolutely right. It has to be done. We have to grow up in that sense and spend much more. We also have to discuss the defense industrial base. Of course, this is a problem we have both in the US and in the rest of NATO. We are simply not producing enough. We are not keeping up with the Russians and the Chinese. And then, of course, Ukraine. How to bring Ukraine to a lasting peace. No Minsk again, so it has to be lasting. Putin should never try it again. And how to get him into a place of maximum strength when the talks start. So, a lot to discuss, and we're looking forward also to build a relationship.
Great. Likewise. Good to see you. Thank you.
And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children. I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections, or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk. But what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't.
Wir kämpfen auch dafür, dass du gegen uns sein kannst. Das ist das Selbstverständnis der Bundeswehr und steht dafür auch für unsere Demokratie. Diese Demokratie wurde vom US-Vizepräsidenten für ganz Europa vorhin in Frage gestellt. Er spricht von Annihilation of Democracy. Und wenn ich ihn richtig verstanden habe, vergleicht er Zustände in Teilen Europas mit denen in autoritären Regimen. Meine Damen und Herren, das ist nicht akzeptabel.